Thank you all for joining this event. It's really rare to have these design leaders in the city to join in one place, and so thank you so much for making it today. Why don't we kick off by each of you introduce yourself along with top 3 products or services that you really enjoy using for the last 20 years.
Okay, my name is Gadi. I run NewDealDesign. Top 3. Okay, obviously you cannot do without an iPhone. That's something that is so important. I also use Fitbit for about 15 years already. And the third, honestly, I got an EV, electric car. It really changed my approach towards EVs. So I can say that.
Great, thank you.
We're just going to go down the line here.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan. And did you want us to do our little bios too?
Yeah, go, please,
No?
please.
Okay,
No, that's
okay. Did you
you should, yeah.
tell us who you are?
Who am I? Okay. So I wasn't born here, as you may see by the hint of the accent. I came here around 30 years ago to frog design, where Dan was there, and so there were a lot of froggies here. I was born in Israel. I was born to a family of architects and found myself tinkering with design studio from more or less age 0. And the one thing I could say about myself earlier on in high school, I was a pretty big geek, and I didn't think that I'm going to end up in design. But somehow in my early 20s, I did a 180 and went to art school, like a proper old school art school. And you still draw with your hand and do things like that. And that really changed my life and really set me right. So that's my Bible.
If you can't guess, I'm also from somewhere very exotic. Cincinnati, Ohio. It's actually a really great place to grow up because you learn what mediocrity means, which is very important for a designer. It's aiming to solve problems and address issues. So similar to Gadi and a lot of other industrial designers, I was a bit of a tinkerer, troublemaker as a teenager. I made a lot of dangerous things, go-karts that went 70 miles an hour. I still drive too fast. That's probably one of my top 3 products. I'm kind of obsessed. I've had like 6 911s. So that's got to probably be one. I admit it. It's not very politically correct nowadays to go fast or to use combustion engines. But gosh, I've had a storied career. I've had incredible opportunities to work with great companies. I've worked with the great George Nelson. When I was a student, I had a brief stint at HP, which taught me that I really didn't want to be a corporate designer. I worked at Henry Dreyfuss Associates in New York. Then I joined Frog Design here in 1989. From 89 to 99, I was at Frog. That's when I met Gadi and a lot of other really interesting people. Founded Whipsaw exactly 25 years ago. Yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't have all of your emails, so you missed the grandest, coolest party last week that I still have a hangover from. We design products for the world, consumer electronics, medical, all different types of housewares, vertical markets like life sciences and gene sequencing machines, slot machines. I mean, there's nothing we don't design. Surgical equipment. What else do we do? There's a bunch of Whipsaw people sitting right here. We just do sporting goods. I mean, you name it. So we're kind of prolific, ridiculous overachievers. And we love what we do. We're just passionately driven. And that's what I think really matters the most, probably. That will hopefully be a theme. I answered one of your three questions, one of the three, let's see. I like it, like, do they have to be products? I'm obsessed with, like the jet engine and a wing. I'm flying to Japan tonight, so I paying homage to the plane that's gonna take me there. Design Milk just asked me what are my five favorite products, and weirdly, cotton was one of them, because it's like, it's everywhere. It's under, it's over, it's here. I mean, you're all wearing it, but we take it for granted. So anyway, that's me. Nice to meet you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Brandon Ramos. I'm a product designer manager here at Lyft. Been here about 6 months, so I know everything. I got my start in design, kind of like these guys, where I was always tinkering, but I'm in product design, digital space. So I got a lot more interested in early websites, GeoCities, all those kinds of early HTML. That's kind of how I got my start. But I thought that's what you got to do. You got to program, and then you can design. So first learn the mechanics of it. So I got really deep into HTML, CSS, some early JavaScript, and realized I wasn't having as much fun, but I still liked being immersed in everything. That's when I found Flash. So about 20 years ago, I was introduced to Flash as a way to easily access animation and easily access transitions, easily tell a story in just a few seconds. And I was hooked, and I actually stopped going to class for my very lucrative philosophy and political science career that I had, and started going to work at a small website for the school I went to, and just kind of was hooked from there. So enrolled in art school, did the whole digital or hand drawing thing as well, but really found my way into having that philosophy degree of asking questions, always trying to understand why, what's the purpose, what's going on, fit really well with product design. And sort of the ethos of always trying to learn more, understand what and why we're here, really translates to helping enhance the users, the people who are using all of our products, and really transport myself into being them, or have them come and be on the seat with me, and learn how I'm going to be creating and designing new projects and new products. So a lot of different startups, different companies that have come and gone in the past, but excited to be here at Lyft now and be with you all. So 3 top products. I'm gonna go Android, just to be contrarian. It really acts, well, most of the world uses Android. So being aware of what's going on in the other platform, and also realizing that high design doesn't have to necessarily be limited to the form factor. It can also just be in what you create and what ideas you express. So I love Android for that reason, and it just brings accessibility of digital thought, digital design, digital information to everybody. Second would be wireless speakers. I love just going around my house anywhere, or just taking it out with me to the backyard, and always be connected to music. You know, I always had the Walkman, the Discman. Now I can just be anywhere with music following me around. And then third, that's a tough one. I have a 2009 Prius that I stole from my mom, and I hated this car so much. It's ugly. It just didn't really, you know, it was boxy, has a terrible blind spot, but that gas mileage, you know, I can't get over that. So I haven't fully gone to the EV crowd, but that I'm surprised to say it, but I love that car.
Hey everyone, I'm Leitch. I'm the managing director of Frog in North America. I'm very happy to be with so many frogs on this panel. Ex-frogs. You're always a frog, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I came to design through the service design route. So I was finding myself just increasingly frustrated with how much investment we would put into making promise after promise to a customer or a patient or a user, and then we would never deliver on it. And so my obsession became being able to make sure that an organization was able to actually deliver on the promises that it was making to their customers or their users or their patients. So that's what really drew me to service design as a field. And so I studied that in London. I lived in London for a long period of time. I'm not from America either. I'm from Sydney, Australia. People have been telling me recently that my accent has gotten stronger since I moved to the US. Maybe my time in London is lifting, and my true Australian is coming back out, living in San Francisco. But I lived in London for a long time, ran some agencies there, and then moved to the US about 5 years ago. And Frog, if you don't know, it's an over 50-year-old design agency, and we're the reinvention and experience partner for many of the companies that you would know, some really iconic brands. And we've expanded our remit to cross everything from strategy through to implementation digital products. So we're doing a really, really wide range of design now. Top three, I'm going to say services. So I actually love Waymos. Has everyone taken a ride in a Waymo? Yeah. I love it. It's so calm. It's so clean.
I mean, it's Lyft office.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I love this too. I love this too. And I,
Monster Inc.
yeah.
Somebody jumping through the window like Monsters Inc.
I also really love Airbnb as well. I think that there's so many different types of experiences that you can get from staying in that kind of environment. Like it's it's something that kind of opens up other places in the world that have never been open to you before. And then the other thing I love iPhone as well. Obviously, it's a game changer societally. And it's interesting, the Porsche thing seems to be a Frog thing too. It really is. It's like the number of people who have come through Frog and talk about their Porsches is something to be analysed, I think.
The very first car I purchased was Porsche 928.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, cool.
Before even getting my driver's license. And San Francisco, I got pulled over, going over 100 miles on Bay Bridge. And they took my car away, but I got it back. And I got dismissed for everything. It's just like never from like a long time ago. Oh, yeah, by the way, my bio is like, I was born and raised in Japan, and I failed to get into college because I was only good at arts and crafts and music. I tried to become a musician. I failed, but I decided to name my company after my music background, btrax, B-side of records. And I tried to become a designer. I failed, so I decided to start my own company. That's the history. Anyway, so the discussion topics. The first one, how do you think the evolution of designers' roles changed for the last 20 years due to the technological advancement, society changes, or how the teams are formed differently? So I think you have seen so many changes in the design community and companies, design teams and stuff. So I'd like to know how the roles of a designer have evolved last 20
How
years.
did you start?
Oh, I got the hot mic. All right. It's been really interesting. I think I see a lot of discussions always like, should designers code? Should, do we even need design at this point? I don't know how many people went to config, seeing like all the AI that just sort of took most of my 20-year career really fast. So I think it's really interesting to see where we're evolving, where we come from, and just how manual the role of designer has been, but where their position in the company is. I think a lot of times design is seen as that service at the end, after you come up with who the user is, what you need to be doing, how you're going to build it, what are all the specifications, then you bring the design to make it look pretty. And I'm really happy to say it's not the case anymore. So I think where the designer has gone is being in a drafting table in the back of the room to being at the seat, at the table, coming up with what's going on, how we're going to be building it. So I see that a lot more in respect for the craft, respect for the community, but also understanding that good design makes a better product, makes a better company, and makes better service in the long term. So I just really am so excited to see where design has gone to being, again, an afterthought or something you put out post to now being something that's in the forefront. Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think design in the past was always kind of at least when I started out my career, it was more something that you were asked to do as kind of a late add-on to make something attractive, to make it saleable. Whereas now it starts at the beginning, oftentimes right up from the CEO on down. In my world of industrial design that Gadi and I live in the past, it was all about designing beautiful objects. And that's still often what is asked of us. But now we went from only designing objects to designing experiences to designing businesses. Now people like to talk about designing their life. Everything is about design. Design is now part of our narrative. It's a lexicon. It's rooted in who we are as a culture. I mean, that's what we asked for, and we got it. You know, I've been working my whole darn career to get, especially clients, to do the right thing, and design is usually about doing the right thing. We're trying to make advancements. We're trying to improve life in the world. So we finally have the ear. That's changed big time. I love the fact that design is no longer considered to be a noun. It's, to me, I'm seeing it more like a verb. It's an act. Design is an act. I mean, how freaking cool is that? A lot of times companies or clients don't know exactly what design is. They don't know what to do with it. They know it's a factor to help them become either more noticed or revenue, more, but it's a thing that you do to create change. But remember, for everything that has changed, there's a lot about design that hasn't changed. People started talking about design thinking, 15 years ago. I'm kind of a veteran, so I was sort of laughing. I know you were laughing too. God,
I was crying.
you were crying. Because like that kind of that type of like agile thinking and moving through problems, well, that's what you do as a designer. So it was like, well, of course, design thinking, there's also design doing, there's design seeing. Have you all forgotten about that? And so anyway, that I think it's positive that design is just such a part of everything. My only concern is that design is becoming too commoditized.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're a designer.
Yeah.
I go to meetings and they're like, well, we've had design thinking courses, so we know how to guide you. Design firm that's been doing this for more than 25 years. And I just want to throw them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's changed. There's more, but I'm sure that we can.
Well, I'll start. Okay. I was one of the first big critics of design thinking in Fast Company and so on. I won't go there.
No, you
The-
should.
No. Why beat a dead horse? The real issue, I think, that we are facing when we're talking about design is that there are essentially two discussions. There's the external discussion that includes that everybody is now a designer. Design is solving problems, solving all the problems of the world, right? Done it by 5 p.m. today, right? And there is the inner discussion that I think is a lot more substantial about what is a designer, who is a designer, how design is happening, and how do we create now at the executive level, how do we create right ecosystem for design to thrive. So the real change has been that there wasn't much change there, I gotta say, even though there's a lot of recognition. Many companies still see design as a linear process, while design is inherently non-linear process. You sometimes get to the solution after you've done 1,000 sketches and there was this sketch at the bottom of the heap that you didn't pay attention to, which is the right one. So the nonlinearity is something that to a lot of people is a huge problem to recognize. The other thing is, I actually don't call myself now an industrial designer, I call myself technology designer, but still the visual aspect of the thinking is very, very important. So most people in our education system is programming people to think in numbers or letters. I don't know how many people are familiar with the thing ASCII, ASCII. 99% of the people are talking that. There are only very few people, 1%, actually talking in forms and doodles and incoherent sometimes visual expressions. And that is how designers really think. And the biggest difficulty that we have, even after like 20 years or 30 years of design flourishing, and indeed it is to recognize these nuances and these imperfections that are so important to create a perfect design. So this is somewhat of a 180 degrees process from design in the early 90s that was coming after the fact through the glory days. And now I do think that there is misconceptions about designs that are really at the heart of what people call design today.
I mean, I agree. I agree with a lot of what you have already all said. You know, I think that design has evolved significantly, and it's definitely gotten to the point of ubiquity. And perhaps it has been too successful. And we, as agencies, have done a really good job in selling it and selling the process of design. And have almost to its detriment. And you know, if you think back at in the last 20 years, actually, the last 10 to 15 years were a really good time to be in design. The market was growing. The problems that design was being used to solve were growing exponentially. There were so many more opportunities for designers to be, you know, solving the kind of problems that we all like to solve, like very complex problems. And so, you know, there were increasing numbers of jobs. You were seeing it in corporates, in government. You're seeing it in non-profits, and so just a huge different range of problems. But I think in the last few years, and I think it got to a kind of a fever pitch during the pandemic when there was a ton of investment. People were trying to catch up on digital maturity, and so there was a ton of investment in kind of hiring a ton of designers, hiring technologists, hiring product managers, and those teams springing up everywhere. And so it kind of led to 2023, and I think there was a bit of a correction in design as a field. People looked at the investments that they made. They looked at the kind of the spread of people across the organization, different parts of the business where things have popped up, and they looked at the ROI, and there was a correction, I think, in the industry. And so now we're here, and I think things are improving again, but I do think we have to change. I think we have to move on from human-centered design as kind of as a product, as a process in and of itself. And I think that the future is really bright. I actually think that the future for design is in systems thinking, and I think that's the area that is going to be really important as we move into a much more kind of data and AI enabled universe. All the skills that we have for navigating really complex problems using systems thinking are the things that are going to see design continue to evolve and be at the center of solving problems for the next 20 years, I would say.
Yeah, so speaking of technologies such as AI, automation, and robotics, how do those technologies affect your job as a designer or owner of design agencies and stuff?
No.
So maybe industrial design or
Yeah, you want to talk about industrial?
Sure.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it. Sorry.
No, that's right.
Yeah, we want to fight the microphone. AI seems to be an amazing tool. So far, it has next to little effect on how we do things. I tend to explain people that there's one AI application that has been out in the streets for the last 10 years, autonomous cars, and kind of like not exactly a huge success yet. I think the biggest issue with AI is what I mentioned earlier, the non-linearity of the design process.
Yeah.
And that is very, very, very difficult from a technological perspective to program into AI. So we've been experimenting on and off with it. It will be able to create a lot of permutations of an idea. Will it really change the process? I don't know. I know one thing though that is not that great, that in the VC community, it has already caused a big change in approach towards design product development, and they're looking for AI to change their ROI formula and shortcut the processes. So I'm actually quite concerned about that from that perspective. Yeah, and one thing I learned through the last 30 years in the Silicon Valley, the hype machine keeps hyping, and it's just unbelievable. And I think there is a point where we need, as a community, to push back. And I think to some degree, this is a good point to start pushing back against AI. I also think that some of the people who drive AI are not necessarily the most cultural or societal driven people. So we also have a role in curbing that runaway train. But I believe eventually AI or high level of intelligence is something that is bound to happen. It's going to be actually a very dramatic point in the history of humanity. We never lived with a being that is as intelligent as us. So that is going to be a very dramatic moment, and we're trying to influence robotics today to get the right ingredients into robotics, into system thinking about interaction between cloud AI and endpoint physical objects or experiences. And it's going to be a very tumultuous decades ahead of us.
Just a few more thoughts on it from an industrial designer's perspective, which is, I think, intrinsically very different than word models, even service models. We work with materials and physical interactions. And when you are designing real products that are mass produced, it's so important to touch it, to feel it, to let that concept come to you through this experience that we call life. It's the best part of design. That's where soul resides. That's true soul when you are creating. With AI, although I am fascinated with it, and it's going to take whatever path it's going to take. I don't know how you resist it. I think we just have to accept that it's part of natural evolution. It's the natural evolution of humanity, I think. And I'm kind of freaked out about it, kind of love it too. It's weird. The shit it pumps out is like, what? You put in prompts in Midjourney and what you see it's always a surprise. It's usually not a nice surprise, but it's weird. It's weird because it hasn't been able to go through that process where information comes through us distally to become a proximal percept, which forms a perception. That happens in our minds in a form of energy. It goes from your motor cortex to your prefrontal cortex, where you're actually imagining something coming to life. As an industrial designer, that's what you're doing. the way that we use it presently is to help us set a context. So in other words, when you're designing a product, sometimes as an industrial designer, you might be doing, say, water bottle, or we all drink, right? You have since you're a little kid, so you already know about that experience. But what if you're designing a product for a guy that builds buildings? He's a construction guy and he wants to use a robot to map his floor. To design for that person, and I believe in user-centric design, I'm the opposite of Jess. I think we need to double down on it because the world needs better products that are more responsible, that do indeed touch the individual. But you might have bet that differently.
I meant selling the process.
But anyway, the AI is good for setting context where you will ask it to produce an environment. And then you look at that, you let your team be inspired. It's a way of cheating on research. You kind of get into it. I remember designing a keyboard with Tom sitting right there a little while ago. And the first thing he did is like, he created an environment of these super keyboard users that I didn't know about. There's like $500 keyboards. And he did these things on AI. It made me think about it completely different. And I was able to design some cool stuff. Thank you, AI. It didn't design it for me. It just made a context. Like, this is the desk, the space, the colors, the materials. I was like, oh, now I kind of get it. Remember that, Tom? Yeah, you do. So anyway, it's coming. It's coming. And I don't know if we'll all lose our jobs. I don't know if my company will be half the size in 5 years or will double the size, but it's going to change. Design has changed. I'm not afraid of it. Embrace it, master it.
Inspiring. I agree. I think in a lot of senses that AI is here to stay. But I also agree it's not something to be afraid of. It's something to embrace. One of the things I think about is, as a product designer, a lot of times if you ask any designer, can you draw me a picture of a horse or a person or something that they can? It's not any lack of skill or anything like that. That's just not the skill that they've curated. That's not the skill that they have developed for their end use of their product. And I think that's really what's going to be happening a lot more with as AI comes in. I mentioned a lot of stuff we saw in config a few months ago. Jokingly, like that took a lot of the manualness out of my job previously. But I think that's actually accelerator to what we are doing. So we're not actually going to become generators ourselves, but synthesizers. We are now editors. What we can do is ask AI to come up with 10 different concepts, 20 different concepts, come up with 10 more concepts of those 20 concepts. You can infinitely spread out the generation, and your job then becomes how to curate, how to bring systems thinking to that, how to expand and scale, how to think a little bit more of what's the actual human application we're trying to do. But I can curate that with AI to help me move faster and help me understand a little bit more what I'm actually trying to produce. A lot of times you have to go through those 1,000 sketches before you get there. Now you can create 10,000 sketches instantly, but you have to know what you're looking for. You have to know what that brings to the client, what that brings to the product, what that brings to the end user. So us becoming editors, curators, I think gets a little bit more to what we're trying to do. But as you go up into management or things like that, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm not actually in Figma. I'm working with my designers saying, hey, what do you think about this? Why are you using that button? Why are we doing this here? How does that scale? How does that international? And made that look good in French. It's hard to do. So I think a lot of times we're just trying to up level our people. So a lot of people will necessarily not be in a job suit, but I think it also helps that curation and craft of who actually should be helping lead us to the next thing, who can think that product thinking, design thinking, curation, craft, and that's going to actually up level our industry in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. AI is not a replacement for taste, and for the taste that's developed over working, 30 years in an industry. In no way, in fact, if anything, I think it will drive us towards humans as an upgrade. So people wanting to opt out of product and service experience in favor of dealing with humans directly. I mean, it's not something, I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I think it's something to embrace. I think it's part of the evolution of design as an industry for us to be able to bring it into our process and bring it into the way that we design products and services. I'm actually quite excited about the prospect of using AI and various technologies to kind of free us from this world of apps and algorithms that we're trapped in at the moment. I'm excited about what like a natural language future would look like, something that's centric around the way that something that is more linked to how we communicate with each other, that goes beyond those kinds of little apps that are on our phone that steal our brains and steal at that really make it difficult from a context switching, that force you to enter same data again and again and again, and just aren't that good for completing tasks. Really excited about the future of, when we get to a state where we can have kind of large action models that will learn our preferences, that we can train, and that will execute these kinds of actions on our behalf. And then I'm excited for what the future could look like for brands, because they'll be able to interact with their customers or their users or their patients, whoever it happens to be, in new ways. They'll be able to define their relationships in new ways that go beyond these tasks that are kind of grouped into apps. And that's the way we engage with a lot of brands at the moment. There's so many possibilities. I mean, we just moved into a new space in Mission Rock, just around the corner here, and we have this immersive room, and my team built this great demo. We call it the holodeck. So we built like an industrial design kind of prototype of the holodeck, and our technology team hooked it up to this basically this 360 immersive room where we call on a variety of Gen AI APIs to allow you to go in there and request to be anywhere in the world and have the vision basically returned back to you. So I'm so excited about what the future of experiences could look like if we embrace AI. We definitely are not fearful of it. And it's just going to create a new wave of opportunities for us all as an industry.
So do those evolution of technologies affect the type of designers that you look for in your companies or your teams? I'm curious to know, like, any advice towards the emerging designers, like specific skills or mindset or process that they need to have in order to apply to your teams or companies to get accepted? Any changes, or are there anything that don't change, anything that you want to see more for today's designers in terms of skills and mindset?
Yeah, start quickly. I would advise you all to, I don't think it's about changing. I think it's important to get a good grounding in design, and that's going to become even more important. As I said, I don't think it's a replacement for taste. It's not a replacement for creative direction. It's not a replacement for knowing what good looks like. In fact, we'll need that more, because everything's going to get closer to the middle. And so we're going to need more creativity and authenticity. And so it's not a replacement. What I would encourage you all to do is to learn about systems thinking. I would encourage you to read science fiction. I would encourage you to do those kinds of like mind expanding things. That might be the
How about drawing skills?
I think that is part of learning what good looks like, for sure, and being able to develop your own sense of taste and style. I think practice is important for that.
Because in a way, using AI, you don't have to draw yourself.
No, but there's a process
Okay.
a creative process that's part of it, but
it off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think one thing that, I know this is one of the other questions, but one of the things that really bothers me is the light source. And AI gets it wrong. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how many light sources there are, right? So yes, AI can build or design or create something, but you have to know why that looks wrong. Why doesn't it look just slightly off? Like what is it that's just making us take another look at that for the wrong reason? So I think, yeah,
Prompts will get better.
prompts will get better, but yeah, again, I think it's having that's the skill, having the eye, having the craft. Systems thinking, definitely.
Yeah.
But I also would say more in-depth product thinking. So understanding the business, understanding why the business works the way it does. A lot of times I find myself as again, on the digital side, I'm a translator. I'm translating what the user needs and what the business wants. And there's a middle ground. You just have to find it. So I think for a lot of younger people, it's like really understanding economics, really understanding supply and demand, really understanding how margins work. It's really boring, but it's really fascinating too. So if you're able to do that, you can have an understanding of why you're trying to be asked to, or why you're asked to do something, why your design makes sense, and maybe why other ideas that the business is trying to go after don't make sense. So if you're able to stand on your own and be able to defend that as well, I think that really leads you to being a strong designer with a strong point of view. Having a strong point of view is a skill that I think you develop over time. But if you come in early, and not saying being a jerk, but like having a strong conviction of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it matters, why it matters to the user, why it matters to the company, then you'll be a successful designer.
Our clients come to us looking for good design, period. And if some hotshot came to me, to get back to your question, and said, I can use AI and produce really good design, and you can be even more successful than you already are, or it allows you to go beyond your stupid human brains, yeah, we'd give it a shot. The technology is so nascent right now.
Yeah.
It's a joke. You sit down and you put word, you have to go from a language model to a visual model.
Yeah.
Which is really a language model.
Yeah.
They're one and the same. When you realize that, how stupid it is to sit down and blast so many prompts to get something that's kind of okay. It's not cool yet. So there isn't anybody walking in saying, I know how to really do this in a new
Yeah.
way. I expect in the next few years, that's gonna happen. Some little whippersnapper is gonna come in and say, I figured this shit out. Then we'll hire her. Or her. It's probably gonna be her. to be honest.
I think the emphasis has been in a lot of design programs to develop skills.
Mhm.
I think the most important skill is thinking. And I think a lot of the work we do nowadays is kind of being an architect of a very complex system.
Yeah.
And having skills to understand the breadth of the system and having an opinion on it is actually going to be a lot more important than knowing how to render or to draw a horse. But one thing I want to say about drawing, one of the things we've done about 10 years ago, we started an experience design team, which is, the non-physical side of New Deal, which is about half what we do. And a lot of the struggle there was to move the team from a mentality of wireframes to a mentality of doodles. These are notional sketches, and there's always this first sketch that people are brave enough to put on a whiteboard. It doesn't look anything like the designer's sketches, but this is so revealing and so opening to their mind of just trying to express notions with just a little quick doodle. And I think that is a skill that, combining with this breadth of a system, ideas, and architects of, a lot of, different components coming together, that's a skill that is underrated today in the design education.
True.
Thank you. I have a question from one of the audience. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and he was asking, so Dan, Whipsaw is in business for 25. How about NewDealDesign?
25
25,
in 3 months. So.
3 months, okay, cool. And maybe Fuse, similar.
Yeah.
So there's something going on, the late 90s. There are many design agencies started in late 90s. Are there any particular reasons for that? Is it because of the World Wide Web becoming more available? Or are we in a similar situation that we have AI revolution happening now? So 25 years ago, there's internet exploding.
That's a good question, Will. The 3 firms you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Came out of Frog.
Okay, why?
So clearly something was going on at Frog.
In the 90s.
in the nineties. Yeah. So, especially toward the late nineties,
Yeah,
it did have something to do with digital design. Because the founder of the company he was very enamored by what we were calling new media
Mhm.
design.
Yeah.
That's digital design.
Yeah.
To the point where he was beginning to, in my opinion, kind of marginalize industrial design. And that's always been on my flag. I love doing industrial design. Of course, we do UX too now. Every design firm has had to evolve. But I think a lot of us sort of maybe we had been there for a little while. Eve, Gadi, and I were all working together. We were usually arguing about things together, right? But it was very healthy. By the way, that's a really good thing in a design firm when you have people that have strong enough viewpoints on design where they can actually have a healthy argument and make your point, debate it. If you have to fight, but get on with it. So there was a lot happening. The dynamic in that company was changing, and I think there was also this feeling like there's a chance to start a new design firm at a really great time, like economically, like here comes the internet, World Wide Web, and there are a lot of companies. I mean, there were so many opportunities. Like as soon as I jumped out of Frog, Apple called me, "Can you join our team right away?" I said, "No, I want to do this thing." I think you probably felt the same way about starting your company.
I was scared.
Well, there's a scary aspect to it. I mean, I had butterflies for sure about it, but does that answer your question?
yeah.
Yeah, and Harmit took like a big bet on digital, right?
You
Like
took
he-
a huge
Yeah,
job, didn't you?
he like decided at that time that it was
Yes.
going to be the future, and so he,
Yeah,
Went all
I mean,
in.
he went to the point of telling me, "Dan, industrial design is dead. We're moving toward," I remember him saying that.
I bet he did.
At that moment, remember him saying that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love the guy. He was at our 25-year anniversary party last week, so I'm not gonna diss him because I consider him a friend. He's good, really, he's a very
But very
visionary
passionate.
guy, very
Yeah.
passionate guy. But he had he had a new,
Yeah,
like,
vision for the
thought and
experience.
vision for the company. But we all didn't share that. And I'd say it, but I was right. It was not dead. Steve Jobs decides to come back to Apple, and then came the new iMac, and then came the iPod, and then
Wearables.
an explosion of good industrial design,
Yeah.
truly. That I don't even think we've reached the zenith yet, thanks to technology, material science, new understanding about how people interact with things. I'm more interested in the future. I think we're going to go through, we're talking about change and need for change now. I think it's a little bit like biological systems where a species will kind of run its course and realize this isn't working out for us. So there's a change in the genetic structure. It will shift. It's a quantum shift. And I think we're probably going to go through something like this, partly influenced by AI, partly influenced by service design,
Mhm.
experience design, all kind of coming together into this amalgamation of what design is.
Yeah, speaking of that, so we are running out of time, so this will be the last question, but what are some of the social issues you'd like to solve for the next 10, 20 years through your specialty fields? Any specific?
2 years ago, I added a line in our pitch deck. I call it pro-social design. And part of it is actually pushing back against the tech world and addiction to digital and addiction to screens.
TikTok.
What?
TikTok?
Among that, I mean, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. So we deal a lot with that, actually. Now, it's not necessarily always against the digital domain, but we have now a lot of ways. Some of it is brain sensors, some of them are wearables attached to the body in different places to improve people recognition of their life or their psychology. And for me, this is a great new frontier. It is obviously requiring a lot of breadth in the, thinking about what is the solution? Is that a software? Is that hardware? Is that a combination? Is that maybe even branding? Is that maybe a messaging? So this is really important development in the things we do. And the one thing that we bring to the table is that we've been there. We've been part of the industry. So we've been pushing people to use apps. We've been pushing people to use digital devices. So we know how it works, and now we need to somehow fix it.
I'm going to be really brief. Society, it's where social comes from. Society is really messed up right now. I don't need to tell you, the world is in a heap of trouble. And being a designer type, like everybody in this room here, I'm gonna guess, you have an optimism. You feel like you have some faculty, some facility, some agency that will allow you to make better change, make advancements for the goodness of our planet. This is generally what I think designers should be doing. The problem is a lot of us have been talking about this and we wear it on our lapels like we're supposed to be doing good for the world. And then I look around me, I'm like, if so, why are we in this situation? So I think that designers need to be honest with themselves about what they can and cannot do to improve the world. And freaking get on with it. It's time to bite the bullet. And I don't know where that's going to lead. I just know that we have to do something. We have some initiatives in our company that focus on sustainability and thinking more broadly about what design is. We have this Whipsaw design lab, and we are trying interesting things. Sometimes we can't help ourselves. We fall back into designing really cool things, but we need to do more. We all need to do more. We better fix this before it's too late. It might already be too late. And I think if there's any profession that can bring forward the kindness that our world needs, the hope that we need, the solutions, the intelligence, perhaps most importantly, the creativity, it's the design community. It's not coming from marketing. It might not come from engineering. I hope it does. It should. But design is kind of like the last vestige of hope in a way to make positive social change. So we want to be a part of it somehow. And I'm really open to how that occurs. And I hope everybody has a desire to make that contribution.
Board for Dan.
I don't know how to follow that. Yes, and I had a really fortunate chance to take a year off working recently and just found a new appreciation for not staring at a screen for 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours a day. So I really do think that is part of the problem. Having come from Meta previously, that was everything. That was the metric. That was everyone's metric. And if it wasn't your metric, it was how do you get to that other metric that leads people to being on their screens all the time. And so I think we are part of the problem because we're so good as designers of social engineering each other to stare at a screen longer and longer and longer. So I think any and all ways for us to get back to talking, interacting, touching the ground, picking up some charcoal, whatever it is that you can to be connected to the present world and be able to share that with others. So I think that would be my only yes and to both your speeches.
Yeah, I agree. When I was thinking about this panel, I actually wrote down, I'd love for us to find a way to move on from engagement as a metric, and societally for us, because I think as we're dealing with the unintended consequences of a lack of intentionality, I think, and so I think there is a huge role for design in making sure that when we make these choices, we make them intentionally. And I still think there are ton of basic problems that need to be solved, like services and products are doing detriment to people's lives on a daily basis. Credit checks, for example, or getting a loan, or student loans as an industry, or all things I would love to design. Healthcare. So many things happening in the healthcare sector that are just negatively impacting people's lives, that government services. So many things still need to be designed. We haven't even kind of scratched the surface of some of those industries. So there's still just so much good work to be done if we do it very intentionally and thoughtfully.
Very good. Thank you so much. If you guys have any more questions, please talk to them individually, and we have more pizzas and drinks and everything there. So thank you so much for today's discussions, and this wraps up the panel discussion.
Happy birthday.